Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from Ne Obliviscaris entitled Exul. This is the fourth studio album and the first in just about 6 years from this Australian progressive death metal crew known for their use of violins and viola and string instrumentation, known for adventurous and introspective songcraft. Despite the time gap in between this album and their previous studio album, Earn, released back in 2017, I would say that Ne Obliviscaris have pretty consistently released quality music throughout the 2010s. I still remember when Portal of Eye and Citadel came out, and basically everyone I knew who was into prog metal at that time would not shut the fuck up about those goddamn records. They also released quite a few EPs after that. Of course, Earn in 2017 did quite a bit of touring. They were on the road when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Some of them made it back to Australia, some of them didn't. As a result, working on this album in the midst of COVID-19 was extra super difficult. I mean, it was already difficult because of COVID, but again, they were all in different fucking countries. There is a little bit of a silver lining to these circumstances, though. For one, because everyone was basically separated from each other, they were allowed the opportunity to really focus on what they were doing. And that has had an inarguable impact on Exul as a whole. Everything just pops and shines and sizzles a little better and a little brighter. It's clear that when all these guys actually were back together in a room, they were all really celebrating what they had worked on separately and really tried to find a way to include all of that on this album. And while I'm hesitant to say that this is their best album, this is probably the most fully realized version of Ne Obliviscaris to date. Title track and opening number Exul wastes absolutely no time in bombarding you with blast beats and evocative, lush string instrumentation, pounding guitars, soaring clean vocals, and ferocious gutturals. There's a lot of contrast, a lot of color, a lot of balance, a lot of really great dynamics. The sound is clean and muscular. The way that sections of this song transitions into other sections, more so than any other track on this album, I would say is 110% seamless. It's kind of beautiful. It honestly reminds me of like Opeth back in their glory days. While the song itself is pretty bulky, clocking in at 12 and a half minutes, it remains extremely exciting over the course of those 12 and a half minutes. Anyone can make a song that's long, but to make one that's consistently really rewarding and keeps your attention 100% of the time, that's a genuine accomplishment. Then there's Suspire, which borrows a lot from tech death. There are some intricate grooves and passages and rhythms and tons of technical guitar wizardry that wouldn't be out of place, honest to God, on something from Beyond Creation or First Fragment. Somewhat ironically, once the string instruments and the clean vocals make it to the forefront of the sound, that's where Ne Obliviscaris also simultaneously doubles down on that death metal influence with some pummeling, brutal blast beats. It makes for something that feels very robust and dark and cinematic. I'm reminded of mid-2000s Enslaved to a certain degree, albeit without a lot of that black metal influence. The double whammy of Misrecord 1 and Misrecord 2 is pretty fantastic as well. Part 1 goes straight for the jugular with ferocious, dynamic, over-the-top, emotionally charged, progressive, and technical death metal. A lot of great emotionally charged hooks, a lot of wild, unpredictable riffery and percussion and string work. I almost feel like I'm watching like an epic action thriller, like I'm watching John Wick or something. I'm on the edge of my seat. And part 2 follows that up with probably some of the best instrumentation on the entire record. It is a mostly instrumental number that spends a lot of time constantly building tension and momentum with string work and guitar work, and it gets genuinely pretty powerful. When you finally do get to the ultimate climax of the song and vocals are introduced, it almost feels like I'm watching a volcano erupt and explode. The closing track, Anhedonia, though, might honestly be my favorite track on the record. It strips away all of the electric guitars, it strips away pretty much all metal influence entirely in favor of a gloomy, melancholic, piano and string-driven classical ballad. I like how there's something just kind of off about the string work as well. Like, the violins and the viola, there's just something kind of erratic about it, you know? There's this uneasy kind of feeling and vibe all through it. As abstract as the lyricism can be, it's still made relatively clear that the album is dealing heavily with themes of depression and despair and unwanted departures, and you can definitely feel that emotion in this song specifically, and in specifically how the strings are mixed and performed. And on that note, I gotta say, this is probably the best that string instruments, violins, and violas have sounded on any Ne Obliviscaris record. In the past, I've always kind of thought that it was more of an atmospheric kind of thing, you know, strings were more of an afterthought, a garnish as opposed to a main ingredient, but here they consistently shine and sparkle and very often steal the spotlight. They are treated as a primary component as opposed to an accessory. Finally, and I love it. Whatever criticisms I do have would be leveled towards vocals, not so much how they're performed, but rather how they're mixed and how they're mastered and how they're presented overall across the album. Like, the clean vocals sometimes just kind of feel removed from everything, like it's louder and brighter. Meanwhile, the guttural vocals, the harsh vocals, they often feel kind of muzzled. It's not a big deal, as you still get most of the power and the weight behind these performances, and this could also be a byproduct of Ne Obliviscaris being quite literally separated across continents and countries, but irregardless, it is something I noticed, and thus something I feel the need to bring up. Overall, I'm feeling a 4 out of 5, maybe leaning slightly towards a 3.5 out of 5, but a 4 out of 5 nonetheless. I think it's a great album. I think it's much bigger and bolder than previous Ne Obliviscaris records, arguably maybe a little less playful, but I'm not really bummed out about that. I prefer this more focused and refined take on Ne Obliviscaris' brand of progressive death madness. I don't see any reason why prog nerds and longtime fans wouldn't be elated with this. It's got pretty much everything you love, just in a slicker, more cinematic package. Obviously, it's far too early to really start talking about another album, but I do think that Exul puts Ne Obliviscaris on a new path towards something much more exciting and powerful in the near future. I mean, hopefully near future, hopefully not at the very least another 6 years. Whatevs. We'll deal with that when we get there, I guess. 4 out of 5. Good. It's a great record. I liked it. Anna, what do you think? I've hit the table. What do you think?
I like it. I love Ne Obliviscaris.
Wow.
I really, really like them. Yeah.
Nice. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown e-fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.